So this is my version of a wavy edged anticlastic bangle. I'm going to make a wavy edge anticlastic bracelet, and instead of cutting the metal into a sinusoidal or snake-like shape, I'm going to stretch the metal using a hammer. Now, once you understand what we're doing, there are a lot of different hammers you can use. My original idea was to use a raising hammer with a rounded edge. You can see the profile. I have a raising hammer with a slightly tapered edge. I have a standard old cross pane hammer. You can see the profile. It's fairly square, but it'll work. This is a locksmith's hammer, or a lock breaking hammer, which is slightly rounded. And you can just use a planishing hammer with the slightly rounded side. Because what's going to happen is, when we hit the metal with a steel hammer against a steel anvil, it's going to stretch. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to hit it on the edge towards the middle. We're not going to go past the middle. So as we're hammering the edge, it's going to stretch and the metal will curve. So I'll go over to the anvil and show you. And I'll use each one of these hammers just so you get the idea of what they do. So I'm going to start with the small rounded side of a raising hammer. So we don't want to hit the anvil. We want to just hit the edge of the metal. So you can see it's starting to curve where I'm hitting. So that was my raising hammer. This is a cross pane hammer, and I'm going to go to the other side. So I kind of like that better. It's moving the metal more. Yeah, so now we have a wavy piece of metal. So, the locksmith's hammer. So we go back on this side. Pretty good. And I'm going to use just the rounded side of the planishing hammer. We'll see how it goes. Now, not quite as good, but a prettier pattern. So, this is my other raising hammer. You can see that I'm just hammering on the one side of the metal, and when I hammer on the one side it tends to stretch. Now, when I make this bracelet, I'm going to leave all of these separate hammer marks in here. I quite like them. So I'll put some more over here with my planishing hammer, and then I'll probably finish up with my lock breaker's hammer, and then we'll form it into a bracelet. So of all my fancy hammers, this rough old $5 cross pane from a Swap Mart hammer was the one that actually stretched the metal the best. So now I'm going to file my ends flat, form it around, and solder it together. And this is going to be the inside. So get the ends of your metal lined up properly, stir up your flux, put a little line down the join. Now I'm going to use two 4mm long pieces of hard solder for this. Because it's a fairly long join. So I'll pick those up on my soldered pick. Dry out the flux. Once the flux goes clear, I'll place my solder. And at that point the solder should flow fairly quickly. It's a fairly big piece of metal, so use a fairly large amount of heat. And I've got the breeze trying to blow my flame out. There it goes. Make sure that it flows the whole distance. Quench it, pickle it. Round it up on your bracelet mandrel with your rawhide hammer. Flip it over. Now, use your sanding stick with 400 grade paper. Tidy up your solder joint. And if you sand off any of your pattern, go back on your bracelet mandrel, use the same hammer that you used to make the pattern, and go back over it. Now, if you do this correctly, you won't be able to see where your solder join was. It'll just all disappear into the pattern. Now, all of the rest of this is annealed and ready to form, except where I hammered it, and I'll re-anneal that, and then we'll form it on the sinusoidal stake. So I'm going to use my Delrin hammer, plastic, and I'm just going to hammer here, and as I go, I'm going to turn the bangle so that I'm hammering right in the middle of the metal. Yeah? So you can see what's happening. So go all the way around. If you want a deeper curve, then we'll go to the next one and go. So you hammer it until it goes to the bottom of the stake. And you can hear it. It gets louder when you hit the bottom. So I've gone all the way down on this one, so now I'm going to go into the next one, go all the way down with it, and then I'm done. Okay, I'm happy with this. Now I'm going to make it round again and then polish it. So back on the bracelet mandrel, just hit in the middle. Don't flatten out any of your hard work. So this is my version of a wavy edged anticlastic bangle.